Contracts, contracts, contracts. A lot of us don't like them, we hate them. Yeah, I said the word hate. We hate them. It's the truth. However, I'm going to clear it up on how contracts work, specifically the RPA and the RLA. What the hell am I talking about? Well, here it comes. RPA stands for Residential Purchase Agreement. When it comes to contracts and you're working with the buyer, you're going to use the RPA. What is it? Yeah, Residential Purchase Agreement. Anytime you want to make an offer, you're going to make an offer on not a piece of toilet paper, not a piece of scratch paper. You're going to put that offer in an RPA. What is it again? Residential Purchase Agreement. Nice and simple. On this RPA, you're going to put the offer price and all the terms that you want for your buyer. So where do we find these forms, these contracts? Typically, you're going to find these forms at the Association of Realtors in the state you live in. Got it? Nice and simple. So let's go to the seller side. Which contracts forms are we going to need for the seller? When it comes to representing a seller, you want to get that listing. So we call it a residential listing agreement, the RLA. Hey, say it with me, the RLA. RLA stands for residential listing agreement. Key word here is listing. Anytime you see that damn word listing, I want you to think of the seller. The listing is the agreement that they hired you, your brokerage, to represent them to sell their house. And that's done under the RLA, residential listing agreement. Before we go any further, do me a favor. I want you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comment section. Let's get straight to it. Quick test. RPA is what? Residential Purchase Agreement. Keyword, purchase. For who? The buyer. Why? Because the buyer is the one doing the purchasing. Got it? Let's get back to the RLA side. So now we got a seller, and he wants to hire you and your brokerage to represent them on their listing. Residential listing agreement. That's the contract you'll be using. Now, what type of residential listing agreement? I just threw a curveball at you. What do you mean, what type of residential listing agreement? Well, there's quite a few types of residential listing agreements, and I want to share 3 of the most common ones with you. Got it? Now, the one I want you to use 100% of the time is called an exclusive authorization and right to sell. So what the hell does that mean? That's a residential listing agreement that states that you will be the exclusive brokerage. Your brokerage and you, the realtor who represents that brokerage, are exclusively going to represent this listing. Isn't that a beautiful thing? They're going to say, okay, fine, I hire you and your brokerage to represent me, and I'm going to offer you 6% commission when you sell my property. Now that 6% commission is a one-time shot. They're gonna say, okay, brokerage, here it is. You represent me with this RLA, here's the 6%. Now what are you gonna do with that 6%? And on that RLA, you're gonna let them know, you're gonna let the seller know, well, with that 6%, I'm gonna be transparent with you. With that 6%, I'm not keeping it all. I'm gonna give half of it away to a cooperating broker. I'm gonna give half of it away to whoever brings me a buyer, another agent that brings me a buyer. Because chances are, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm not going to be the one that finds the buyer. But I'm going to market this thing like crazy to all my colleagues. I'm going to network it like crazy. I'm going to tell the whole world about it. The whole real estate world. I'm going to say, yo, everybody out there who's got a buyer, come check out my new listing. And if you bring me a buyer, I'm going to split the 6% that I'm holding right here with you. I'll give you 3%. I hold on to 3%. Makes sense. That's the RLA. So when it comes to the exclusive authorization or right to sell contract, you're guaranteed as a real estate agent representing that listing commission. Now let me give you an example. The seller, the one you represent, calls you one day and says, hey, Mr. Agent, how you doing? Listen, this is the seller, the one you represent. Hey, listen, I went to work today, and during lunchtime, I was talking to Jim. Jim is my good friend of mine, a good colleague of mine, a good co-worker of mine. Guy's a little nuts, but I kind of dig him. And I told him that I'm selling my house, that you're representing me. And Jim says, whoa, hey, I'm interested. I want to buy your house. Get rid of your agent. So, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, I'm here to tell you that I found my home buyer. I didn't need your services after all. You did nothing for me, so I owe you nothing. Sounds reasonable. Ready? Here comes the kicker. Because you signed the exclusive authorization and right to sell, you represent this house, this listing, no matter who brings the buyer. Still your listing. The seller can't compete with you. So what you might want to say is, well, seller, that's fantastic. Why don't you give Jim my phone number, or better yet, give me his phone number and I'll contact him to put him into this deal. I'll put him in escrow. I'll manage this whole transaction for you. Not as simple as you think. I'll contact an escrow company, a title company, and I'll make this whole thing go honky-dory. For you and your buddy Jim, I'm still owed a commission. And that's how an exclusive authorization or right to sell contract works. Quick quiz, where do we find them? Where do we find these forms, these contracts? Remember that? Yeah, at the Association of Realtors for your particular state. So there it is in a nutshell. Exclusive authorization or right to sell, powerful. Exclusivity, guaranteed commission if you find a buyer. Doesn't matter who brings you the buyer, another agent or the seller himself. So let's go to the next type of RLA contract. RLA option, residential listing agreement. Right, here it goes. This one's called exclusive agency. That's it, exclusive agency. There's still some exclusivity. However, there's one major difference between this particular contract, exclusive agency, and exclusive authorization and right to sell. One major change that separates them. And that major change is this. You remember that scenario I just gave you? That buddy Jim was kind of nuts, but still a good friend of his, still a nice co-worker. Yeah. If the seller brings Jim into the deal, if the seller says, hey, I found my own buyer, they don't owe you any commission. He's right. So that's the only difference. The guy you represent can compete with you. He went and done the fishing and caught his own fish. He doesn't need you. Made a good point. So my recommendation, don't agree to that contract. Don't agree to the exclusive agency contract, which is a residential listing agreement. Stick to the exclusive authorization, quotes, underline, bold, right to sell. Got it? So what's the third I want you to know? Here comes the grand finale, the one I hate, the least of my favorites, and that's called an open listing. An open listing is also a residential listing agreement under the umbrella of residential listing agreements. The very first one we discussed was exclusive authorization and right to sell. The second one we discussed was exclusive agency. And the third one is going to be open listing. Now, what the hell is an open listing? You don't see the word exclusivity in there at all. Open listing is having an open relationship. I want to date a whole bunch of people. What the hell is that all about? Well, it's the seller saying, you know what? I'll give commission to any one of you agents that brings me a buyer. There's no commitment to just one particular person. He wants to date everybody. How cute. He doesn't want to have a commitment with anybody. Well, if that's the case, why would any of these other agents, let's assume it's 10 of them, why would they dedicate their time, money, and effort to the seller? Would you spend time, money, and effort on anyone who's not willing to give it back to you? Probably not. And that's the same exact thing with the open listing, which is under the umbrella of residential listing agreements. An open listing is the seller saying, hey, broker A, broker B, broker C, broker D, broker E, broker F, I'm going to give one of you guys, and only one of you, a commission if you bring me a buyer. At the chance you as a realtor have to take. Are you willing to invest time, money, and effort and probably not be the one to bring him a buyer? Because there's a whole bunch of other real estate agents involved. And that's the difference. So at the end of the day is this. You as a realtor have to decide. Which of these products will you be displaying at your store window? Under the RLA banner, are you going to advertise exclusive authorization and right to sell? Are you also going to advertise exclusive agency? And are you also going to offer open listings? My recommendation, only offer exclusive authorization and right to sell 100% of the time. Now the others exist, doesn't mean you have to use it, right? Baskin-Robbins has 32 flavors, I think it is. Doesn't mean you have to try them all. Every time you go there, you stick to that chocolate. You just love it. So same thing with these contracts. Have a great day. If you like that video, you're really gonna dig this one right here. Take a look at it. You're gonna love it.